Hey everybody, it's Trevor here with the channel where every day is range day, and in this week's video we're going to be going through a full review of my experiences with the Core Essentials EDC Tactical Nylon belts. Let's check it out. For those of you that have been following the channel for a while now, you'll be familiar with the Core Essentials belt that I've been using as my EDC concealed carry belt for the past year and a half or so. We've done a video on my early impressions for the belt as well as a couple other setup options that I thought up for it. And now that I've been using the belt for well over a year, I thought it'd be a good time to go into a full review. The three main topics I'd like to talk about are one, the overall utility and durability of the belt itself, and then I'll go through my thoughts on how well the belt performed in two capacities. The first being an everyday concealed carry belt option. This is the primary reason I purchased the belt and the scenario in which I've used the belt most often. Again, I've had the belt for well over a year now and I've basically worn it every single day. The other setup option would be as more of a budget or minimalist range belt setup where you throw on some mag carriers and a couple outside the waistband holsters and other options like that. I thought the Core Essentials belt could serve as a more budget-friendly alternative to a dedicated belt setup, so you could have your EDC belt and your on-the-range war belt all in one. So I'll just go through my thoughts on how the belts performed in each of these categories. So let's start out with durability. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Core Essentials gun belts, this one in particular is their black nylon tactical gun belt. It is made from a decently strong and stiff nylon material, and the belt functions with the ratcheting mechanism that's common on several belts on the market these days. So there's a ratchet strip on the inside of the belt itself, and the buckle will clamp onto it as you push it through, and you'll hear these clicks. You can just tighten it right to where you want it, and then there's a little lever on the bottom that you pull to release to let the belt out. I'm a big fan of this concept in general, as it allows great adjustability and a great fit to each and every person, but it also allows you to tailor your concealment needs based on what you're carrying and perhaps even what clothing you're wearing by being able to just cinch the gun down a little bit tighter. It also allows for a bit more comfortability where you can loosen the belt when you sit down. Sometimes your concealed carry holster can dig into you a bit more when you're sitting, and this can help alleviate some of that discomfort. And then it's pretty easy to just cinch it right back up when you stand up and you're good to go without sacrificing much concealment. In terms of durability, there's not really too much to say. It's held up pretty great over the last year and a half that I've had it. Again, I've worn it basically every day. If I've got a belt on, it's probably this one. And for the majority of those days, I've also been using it in the concealed carry capacity, so the belt is definitely getting used as intended. Overall, the durability has been great. I mean, there's a couple surface nicks and dings on the buckle based on if I'm scraping it against something or just general wear and tear, things like that. Other than that, the belt itself looks pretty much brand new. It's maintained a lot of its rigidity throughout the time that I've worn it, and the only noticeable wear is right on the tip of the belt that constantly gets fed in and out of the buckle. A little bit of the nylon finish has kind of been scraped off here just on the very tip, but everywhere else the belt looks just as new as I got it. The buckle itself still functions perfectly as the day I got it. Clicks are nice and solid still, and the belt has also not been weakened in any capacity, and the ratcheting system still holds quite strong. The lever works just great, and the little set screws and clamping system that hold the belt into the buckle is just as strong as ever. It's not going anywhere, and I don't expect it to be. There's just that teeny bit of wear here right on the tip of the belt, and that's not really a big deal. I've had nicer quality leather belts fall apart in less time or be in much worse shape. The only item that I could complain about from a durability perspective over the course of the year is this little Velcro loop that Core provides to sort of snug in this piece of the belt that tends to stick out just because of how rigid it is. It's nothing fancy, it's just a little nylon loop with two pieces of Velcro on either end that you can use to wrap around the belt like this, scoot it out to the edge, and it's supposed to hold that little end of the belt from sticking out under your shirt. Now again, this is a pretty cheap piece, but it just hasn't held up that well over a year and a half. The Velcro's pretty worn out, and a lot of times what'll happen, especially if you're practicing draws, you'll pull your shirt up and it will catch on the little loop itself and just kind of rip it out, and then your belt's poking out for everybody to see. And it doesn't really matter too much if you reverse the wrapping of this little loop, because then when you put your shirt back down, it catches the belt loop the exact same way. I've also managed to catch this little piece on things like my seat belt or something like that when you're getting in and out of a car. So there has been quite a bit of wear on this piece, but it just hasn't held up all that well. My suggestion for Core as an alternative to this little Velcro piece could just be more of a stretchy or kind of elastic band that you could slide around the belt, stretch over the double up portion right here, and then have it hold on right there. There wouldn't be any loop or overhang piece for anything to snag on, and it could still just hold this piece tight right against your body. It doesn't really need to be anything that strong, but I feel like including a little elastic loop as opposed to the Velcro would see a lot more longevity in that piece, and you wouldn't have any chances of hooking on it and unhooking it on your shirt or a seat belt or something else like that. But other than that, the belt itself has held up phenomenally. Up next for the review is its utility in a concealed carry application. My EDC concealed carry is this Glock 19 here. It's been all over the channel if you're familiar with us, and it's what I've carried with this belt for the last year and a half. My concealed carry setup with this belt looks just like so. I have the belt buckle offset slightly to my 10 or 11 o'clock position on my waistline, and then the clips fit nicely over the core belt and snapped in below. The belt has been a great option in this capacity. The ratcheting adjustment allows you to tailor your concealment, as I mentioned previously, and the belt just does a good job at supporting the firearm around your body. You don't want something too flimsy so that the belt will just sag and your concealment and fit isn't that great, but you don't want something too tough that would dig into your skin and not move at all. This has just the right amount of flex to maintain its comfortability, but maintain support of a firearm of this size. You could probably go bigger and not have any problem at all. Again, the belt's held up great in this capacity. It lines up with the concealment wings commonly seen on these appendix style holsters, and I would recommend it in this capacity, especially if you're carrying the appendix position. It's worked out great for me, and I'm very happy to have used it as my concealed carry belt for the past year. My only slight issue with this setup here goes back to the buckle itself. Again, as you can see, I have it here at the 10 or 11 o'clock position on my waistline, but a consequence of both the rigidity of the belt and the design of the buckle means that this particular joint here does not flex incredibly well. And based on how it sits on my body, there's a curve around my waist right here that this would have to sit against. But since it's so rigid, it tends to stay flat and kind of digs in a little bit unless I have the buckle in just the right spot and never move it. Again, this rigidity is somewhat due to the rigidity of the belt itself, but it's largely a consequence of the design of the buckle. You can see here that this rotating piece is what snaps into the ratcheting system of the belt, but the actual belt fits into the buckle with this lower flat piece. It's held in with two set screws in sort of a tooth clamp style design, and it does maintain a very good hold on the belt. But as a result, it basically does not bend at all in this section, and very little movement is available here to curve around your waistline, especially if you have this buckle sitting more or less on your left hip. It's not super uncomfortable, and I can usually get it in just the right spot, but a lot of times it'll move out of place and start digging into me, just being a little bit less than comfortable, I guess. An option for improvement here would be something similar to Chandler's new EDC concealed carry belt from the Warrior Poet Society. I believe it's called the Supreme Gun Belt, and it also features a ratcheting design similar to the core, but the overall buckle profile is much smaller. Instead of the clamping design that the core belt uses to fasten the belt to the buckle, it just uses an additional set screw, and the overall profile of the buckle itself is much smaller. This allows you to put it a lot closer to the clips on your gun and potentially in a much better spot while taking up a lot less real estate for it to just be uncomfortable. That is something that I would probably rather have on this core belt, but there is a way to make this setup work and it's still pretty comfortable. You just gotta be pretty particular with where it sits on your waistline. But overall, carrying the Glock 19 here with the spare mag in the appendix position and the Core Essentials belt has worked phenomenally. The belt supports the weight perfectly, and I've never had any problems using it for concealment. The ratcheting system only helps with that. And I would definitely recommend checking out any sort of the ratcheting gun belt designs for your concealed carry needs. It just adds a greater degree of flexibility in your concealment and comfort needs than just a typical 6 or 8 hole belt. The next setup option in the review is what you can see here as sort of a budget or minimalist setup for a gun belt. I thought of this idea as sort of a cheaper option to a dedicated double war belt option, because then you can combine your EDC concealed carry belt and your on the range gun belt all in one. Again, the core belt wasn't specifically designed to be carrying a ton of gear on you, but in a pinch it can definitely work well as a nice minimalist setup. I would typically run it in the configuration that you can see here, with the T-Rex Arms Ragnarok holster on the side with a thigh strap and the Glock 19 in there, and then a couple mag pouches on my left side, being an S-Tac double pistol and then an AR mag. The belt has no problem supporting this amount of weight, and there is a little bit more room for a couple other things across the back, maybe a small med kit or a dump pouch, but I really wouldn't be putting too much more on the belt, as it does start to kind of get bogged down as you put more gear on it. Again, the belt is more tailored to EDC concealed carry type use, so putting pounds and pounds of stuff that you would normally put on a dedicated double war belt isn't really the point of this. But as a cheaper minimalist option for a range day belt setup, it does work quite well. I've never had any problems with the weight of the belt causing excess discomfort. Everything mostly stays where it's at when you have the belt on tight. Of course, it's never going to be as secure as malice clips or something else. You just have certain belt loop attachments on your mag holsters, and it's really just threaded through a belt. So stuff can kind of wiggle around a little bit, but if you have the belt on good and tight, it shouldn't really move that much. And I didn't notice any inconsistencies in terms of magazines or pistol draws while using it in this way. Of course, you're never going to get the same performance out of it as a dedicated double war belt, but I did find that worked quite well in a pinch as a cheaper alternative. I don't really have any real complaints or criticisms for using the belt in this manner. The only thing I would say is that it does take quite a while to set up. Unlike a dedicated double belt, they can just set up once and then just clip it on and off real quickly. You do have to set this belt up how you like it each and every time, because you're probably not using it as a dedicated belt, you're using it as your EDC concealed carry belt. So I'd have to unclip my appendix holster and then thread each of these pieces on each and every time. It does take just a little bit longer, and that's kind of annoying, but that's not really a fault of the belt or anything like that. It's just a consequence of using it in this manner. And again, if you're just looking to save a little bit of money and use this belt to double dip between EDC and on the range stuff, can't really complain too much about that. But overall, it works pretty handily in this situation as a minimalist and budget range belt option. But overall, the Core Essentials has been a fantastic option for me for my EDC, primarily concealed carry needs, and it also works decently in a pinch as a minimalist range belt. It's held up great over the past year, and I don't have any concerns to the belt's durability. The only thing I could nitpick there is this little Velcro piece. It sees a lot of use and it's kind of just worn out over time. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like down below, and if you have any questions about the Core Essentials gun belts or any of the setup options that I've used it for, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, make sure to subscribe to the channel, where every day is range day. Thank you for watching.